Before my wife, 32, and I, 35, got married, when we were in our 20s, she had trouble cutting ties with a long-distance boyfriend she dated for 4 years. She never told me where he lived, but she did tell me he lived 5 hours away. During our dating phase, I told her to choose who she wanted to build a life with. I left her alone for a few days, and she showed up at my house, appearing cleansed and pure of heart. She said goodbye to him, for real, and blocked him on all platforms. She was ready to take this next step into adulthood and responsibility by committing herself to me. I was pleased, but even after she did this, I still waited 2 years before proposing. A little before our wedding, she got kinda antsy, but she disguised it as healthy anticipation. After we were married, she seemed much more at ease, like she finally moved on and was settling into her new life. A whole year after we were married, she started friendships and daily communication with her coworkers. Our marriage was wonderful for years, but I didn't know that for much of the time, she was talking to her ex again. Another thing I should have looked into a little more was how my wife begged me for money. I didn't know it, but she was paying some of AP's bills and buying him things. Our utility bills were barely paid down enough to avoid shutting off. I checked her phone one morning when she forgot it on the way to work. She came back for it, but by then I saw and copied all I needed to. I scrolled back far enough on their messages to find where she tried to keep it strictly friends. She said she missed him so much and thought about him every day. She couldn't resist a little bit of harmless communication. It started as her just wanting to know what he did each day, and then how his dating life was going. They gradually became more and more flirty, and throughout all their messages, she never once mentioned she was married. I wanted to throw up. She was trying to stay strictly friends with an ex-boyfriend, but wouldn't tell him about me and failed to tell me about her friendship with him. In the most recent texts, she said she needed to see him again and started talking about having reunion sex. He was thrilled. I worked up the nerve to tell her to her face that we were over and she needed to get out, but before I could say it, she started telling me a story. It was a giant lie about an upcoming work trip in Altoona. I swallowed all the courage and confrontation I was prepared to dish out and pretended to support her. I knew she was going to visit AP, but the time she was gone would be the perfect time to change the locks, get out her stuff, and file for divorce without her being around to freak out. Little did I know that karma wasn't done with her yet. I kissed her goodbye, and she left for 3 days. On the 4th day, I anticipated the breakup call I was going to make, informing her that I knew everything, had proof, filed for divorce, and if she tried to come back on my property, the cops would be called. Before I could dial her number, she called me. She said she was stuck on the side of the highway, 3 hours from our house, and way off course from where she told me she was going for her work trip. This was rich. I pretended to be concerned and confused about her location, and she couldn't make up anything believable. She just said she was misinformed when she told me where the conference was going to be. I played with her nervous emotions a little more before telling her I knew she was a cheating skank, and I had all the proof I needed from her cell phone. She sucked in air so hard, I thought she would pull the phone in. Just like that, her world became big and scary. She was sitting alone on the side of the highway before she could complete her cheating scheme, and now she had to face the reality that she didn't have a home to return to. I told her I only let her go on the trip without telling her I knew the truth, so I got the chance to file for divorce and get a leg up on dumping her. She was terrified and didn't know what to say. I told her if she tried bugging me or starting rumors, I'd share what she'd done with the whole town. So I hung up on her, and she texted me a few times, begging me to let her come back to get her stuff, and maybe let us talk this out. Since I didn't reply, she called AP. He did come to rescue her, but she lied to him too about where she lived. She told him she was living with a roommate right around the area where she broke down on the highway, so he asked why she couldn't get her to help. My wife had a meltdown and told him she was actually married, and now about to be divorced because I found out about them. I imagine he was shocked and frustrated, but he allowed her to live with him for 5 months. By that time, he had already cheated on her, and when he realized not even that would make her go, he told her she was a mistake and needed to leave. Of course, even without my help, her family and friends found out we divorced. She was gone for 5 months without saying goodbye to anyone. I think she ended up finding some desperate person looking for a roommate, because they couldn't afford the rent on their trailer. She had to pick somewhere close because she never got her car fully repaired after AP's rescue. I don't know where she's going in life, but I've remained hopeful and grateful and found lots of support from people I least expected. Even my ex's parents expressed their apologies and sent me nice things in the mail. Wow, OP, you remained focused and knew right away you needed to separate from this woman. Letting someone live with you after discovering their infidelity is a huge mistake. It's lucky that your wife made up a lie right when you needed the opportunity to leave her. I think karma was already in effect as a positive result for you and undesirable consequences for her. She proved she wasn't ready to let go of her ex and was too immature for marriage. There are lots of people out there who should not be trying to date anyone because they haven't grown up themselves. Some people have no idea who they even are before they try to start molding to another person. It's impossible to know who you should be with if you don't know what makes you tick. I think if your wife would have taken the time to be independent and decide the course of her life, she wouldn't have been so uncertain. Thank you for sharing your story. You handled this very well. Now let's get into our second story for today. I always thought it was a good thing that I, 29, let my wife, 25, befriend guys. I trusted her, and she always let me check her phone whenever I wanted. Because of that, I didn't check it at all, really. I knew she was friends with a guy we'll call AP. She never told me she was going out with him specifically, she'd just say friends. A lot of nights, I'd go with her and see her interact with AP, among other friends. It looked natural and guilt-free. Even though the guy was an obnoxious idiot, they didn't look nervous or flirtatious or anything. Now I know that on nights I didn't go with her, she was seeing him alone. I never would have thought my nice, sweet, charismatic wife would be romantically interested in this butthole. Most nights, when we were out with him and other friends, he wouldn't pay for himself. He never offered to treat the group to drinks, even though the rest of us did it every once in a while. I was starting to see him as the least desirable of all my wife's friends. That's why it was so much worse when I arrived home one day to find him walking out of my house with my wife. I blew up on them, asking why he was here. He started stammering and acting like the idiot he always was. My wife figured the best way to handle it was to pretend he was only there to casually hang out and play pool. She didn't expect me to leave them both standing there and go check downstairs for evidence. She followed right behind me through the house, and as I got closer to the basement, she started pulling on my shirt. I found her clothes on the pool table, along with a towel laid down to keep the table clean. I kicked her out. I didn't wait, debate, argue, or think twice about it. The evidence was there. She cried and tried to negotiate an arrangement so that she could keep sleeping in the house each night. I told her no repeatedly until she took some of her stuff and left for stupid AP's house. As I grieved and contacted my mom and family for support, fate wanted to give me one more tragedy to deal with. 1 week later, my mom passed away. It was a really terrible time for me, but even during this time, I didn't consider reaching out to my ex. I only communicated with family and really close friends. They helped me plan her funeral, and when the day came, the last people I would have expected to see there were my wife or her AP. Yet, there they were, walking over to me like they were the greatest thing to ever happen. I couldn't believe my wife's innocent and happy demeanor, like she had no idea her being there would bother me. On the other hand, I could totally understand AP's cocky expression. I was sure the expression on my face told them they weren't welcome, but AP actually had the nerve to mock me at my mother's funeral. He said my mom wasn't the only thing I lost this week. I saw red spreading in from the corners of my vision, and everything got a little blurry. I remember feeling my arm wind up on its own just before the knockout punch. He landed flat on the ground, and everyone gasped. I took the opportunity to announce my wife's affair and the reason for our divorce. Nobody wasted any time in throwing insults at her and demanding that she leave. When she hesitated to leave, people started telling her to shoo and waving their scarves or coats at her like an animal. I walked away and was supported physically and emotionally by friends and family for the rest of the day. She started screaming in frustration for AP to wake up and come with her. He finally did, and they were led away by security. From then on, my wife's social life was over. Everyone she knew thought she was gross and scandalous. Idiotic AP started believing she would cheat on him, so he left her. Maybe he got a little wiser because of all this. After the divorce was final, my ex was admitted to a mental institution to try to get a handle on her extreme depression and remorse. She felt like she didn't know who she was, and she apologized to me at least once a month. It was hard for her to forgive herself, but I just don't understand how she couldn't see it was wrong to begin with. OP, I am glad you had your family and friends for support over the loss of your mom, and then also your wife. It's completely unfair that you had to face the truth of her infidelity at a time when people most rely on their spouses for support. It's surprising to me that she had the nerve or stupidity to show up to the funeral with AP. That's probably the worst thing she could have done, and then AP completely disrespects and insults you. You had every right to react the way you did. He way overstepped the boundaries of respect and basic human decency. You did the right thing by investigating what she told you and following through with kicking her out. I'm glad her actions provided her with consequences, and even the idiotic AP left her. Hopefully, she gets the opportunity to heal and improve her life, thereby sparing others heartbreak. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.